Good afternoon, everybody. And this is Mark Stivers from the California Housing Partnership. I realize my video is not on. Anthony Zito and I are on the Central Coast at the Rural Housing Summit, where the internet connections are apparently not that great. But I will be moderating, and you will have video of our actual presenters. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into it for us. And first of all, I just want to say I hope everyone enjoyed the SCAMF conference yesterday. But wait, there's more. For the same price, we'll also offer you a major funders panel. It slices, it dices, it even funds affordable housing. So for the next hour and 15 minutes, you can sit back and enjoy this infomercial about what our public funders can offer you. And so by way of introduction, I thought we would just start off. We have 5 of the funders on today, which is a significant number. So we're going to give them the platform for most of the webinar. We will be taking questions at the end. I do encourage folks to put their questions through the Q&A box on the webinar as opposed to the chat. We'll be able to monitor them and make sure those questions get answered a little bit more. And then to start us off, I was hoping that each of the panelists would just do a quick introduction on themselves. And then what I've asked them to also share is what is one thing on their bucket list. So it's probably something you may not know. We've heard from each of these funders in the past, but that may be one thing that might be new for you. So maybe I'll start off with Claudia.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Claudia Monterrosa, and I'm the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Grant Programs at HUD. And I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to join you all this afternoon, evening here in DC, to join SCAM's Funders Forum. And this is actually one of my favorite events of the year. And I'm so pleased to be able to talk to you about some of HUD's exciting and new funding streams and share some exciting policy updates to promote the development of affordable housing here in Southern California. First, I'd like to go over the stream of funding that we currently have. I don't know if you can see the slides. I'm not able to see them, but I'd like to go over the first slide. And just to really give you a quick snapshot of the annual formula grant programs that are under the Office of a Grant Program. So those include the Community Development Block Grant Funding, or CDBG, HOME, the Housing Trust Fund, and CDBG Disaster Recovery. And these are the current amounts for FY23. So as you can see, we have $3.3 billion for CDBG, 1.5 for the HOME program, the regular HOME program, and $382 million for the Housing Trust Fund. And as everybody knows, that is going to be fluctuating from year to year. And for some of you that may or may not know, my office also handles the CDBG Disaster Recovery. And this is a program formula funding that is really deployed in response to presidentially declared disasters. And just this year alone, we had about 5 of those. And since 2015, we have deployed over $50 billion in disaster recovery funding. And some of that actually is going to California as well, especially for the FY22 class of disasters. So now I'd like to go and to discuss some of our new funding in competitions that are currently in the works. If we can go to the next slide. We know that every community has unique housing needs and challenges, and the Biden administration, as a result, is leading a multi-pronged national efforts to address the affordable housing crisis. We have 3 exciting funding streams that are going to be deployed in the form of competitions. The first one is HUD's Pathway to Removing Obstacles to Housing, or Pro-Housing grant competition that will support communities working to remove barriers to affordable housing production and preservation. This is an $85 million grant competition that opened up in September of this year. And I just really quickly highlight that these barriers that applicants can address can include restrictive regulatory zoning or land use policies, outdated procedures or permitting processes, inadequate or deteriorating infrastructure, lack of financial resources, and threats from environmental or natural hazards. This is a first-of-a-kind funding opportunity that will highlight the efforts to communities that have committed to forward policies and practices. And California is leading the way. HCD is leading the way on this, and many of the Southern California, local governments are also leading the way. So we do expect a pretty high volume of submitted competitions. And I just want to remind everybody that the due date for this application is November 6th, which is next Monday. We are also very excited to be administering a new competition to support manufactured housing, which is a critical piece of our affordable housing stock and that has been largely unsupported at the federal level. This new competition is the Preservation and Reinvestment Initiative for Community Enhancement, or PRICE for short. This will provide $225 million to preserve, protect, and grow the supply of manufactured housing across the country, supporting an estimated 20 million people who live in manufactured housing nationwide. We are so thrilled to be able to bring these dollars to communities across the country that are working hard to protect affordability and stability for and with our residents of manufactured housing. Resiliency activities are directly called out as an eligible use in the bill text, and Congress directed us, HUD, to fund grants in a variety of geographic areas, including areas that are prone to natural disasters. We also know that developing new communities and sometimes even replacing existing units may not be possible due to restrictive zoning and land use policies that don't allow placing of new homes. So Congress encouraged HUD to consider these types of factors like reform land use policies in the grant selection process. So please be on the lookout for this new funding opportunity very soon. I hope it's still within this calendar year, and we'll be making a big splash on this. The last exciting competition that we have to add to this historic new funding into play is that we also received $75 million for a one-time award under the Continuum of Care program to build, acquire, or rehabilitate new permanent supportive housing. Congress directed HUD to include incentives in the competition to establish projects that coordinate with housing providers, healthcare services, and social service providers. This is going to be a valuable opportunity for Continuums of Care to partner with other organizations that play a critical role in developing a comprehensive response to homelessness. And we look forward to announcing more information on this program in the very near future, probably at the top of 2024. If we can go to the next slide, I also want to take a moment to urge our state and local government partners to prioritize the spending of their Home American Rescue Plan funding. Home ARP, as everybody knows, provided $5 billion in key resources to provide housing, rental assistance, supportive services, and non-congregate shelter to assist individuals or households who are homeless or at risk of homelessness and other vulnerable populations. And just want to remind folks that each Home ARP is about 3.6 times the size of the regular home allocation, providing a historic one-time opportunity to create housing and shelter assets to serve communities over time. Home ARP has new additional eligible activities to serve vulnerable populations, allowing grantees to consider creative and transformative uses of funding and seek new partnerships to maximize the impact. And I do want to say that the state of California alone received $667 million in Home ARP funding. And the combined LA County, Orange County, Riverside County, San Bernardino, and Ventura received an allocation of over $63 million, and the city of LA alone received over $90 million. And here is a breakdown of how, it's a sort of like a snapshot of how those approved plans plan to deploy the money. And from the information that we have from the approved plans in the state of California, over 62% of that home ARP funding is going for rental construction, and then in subsequent order to supportive services in non-congregate shelter and tenant-based rental assistance. So right now, HUD is really into the implementation mode, and happy to say that we have about 643 approved plans nationwide, and we are working diligently across the nation through our program office and also through our field offices. And if you do have any questions in the implementation or troubleshooting or understanding the guidelines or the requirements, I encourage everybody to please submit a formal request or request for assistance. There's a treasure trove of technical assistance materials in the HUD Exchange. I'm happy to help to direct you to that. And if anybody is in need of specific technical assistance through a TA provider, that is also available and comes with a home ARP. But really want to thank all of the localities that made a tremendous effort to have their home ARP plans approved earlier this year. Okay, so now I do want to say that nonprofit developers and mission-driven organizations, developers are going to have an enormous role in deploying effectively and expanding this funding as quickly as possible. So just as a reminder that is, and we're here to partner with you and to help you in the implementation of home ARP. So now I'd like to go into very quickly into some exciting new policy updates. If we can go to the next slide. Beyond these funding opportunities, we're also working to expand flexibilities within our existing annual formula grant programs to ensure that they can best meet local needs. So a lot of you have been waiting for a proposed rulemaking on the home program, and that is actively at work right now. And so we are seeking to streamline the program and make it easier for grantees and their partners to access funds for critical housing activities. This proposed rule is grounded in HUD's decades of experience administering the program and from feedback provided by key stakeholders such as yourselves. In addition, very recently, last week, HUD also updated its CPD notice on the use of community development block grant funds in support of housing. This notice describes how grantees can use CDBG funds to support and promote the development of decent, accessible, equitable, and affordable housing. The notice highlights ways the CDBG can be used to support resilience planning, identifying the importance of resilience planning in protecting and preserving housing and community stability. And most importantly, this notice encourages the use of CDBG fund for acquisition, home ownership assistance, housing, counseling, and the conversion of existing structures into rental and starter homes. And what was highlighted last week was the connection and expanded use of CDBG for manufactured housing. If we can go to the last slide, I was also really excited to see the California Department of Housing and Community Development announced over $400 million in their federal funding from HUD grant programs for affordable housing. And I want to end by just giving you a snapshot of the current FY24 budget request as it stands right now. We hope that these funds will remain as they are right now. And so if the budget is approved, this will be the funding levels that we would hope to maintain: 3.4 for CDBG, $1.8 billion for the home regular program that includes $100 million in first home down payment assistance, and $290 million for emergency solutions grants. So with that, I will end. And again, thank you for the opportunity to share these exciting news and developments and funding streams that are available to you all. Thank you. I'll pass it on to you, Mark.
Thank you, Claudia. And if those of you in the audience have any questions for Claudia, please do put them in the Q&A. We're going to come back to and then we'll after Gustavo. So Gustavo, please.
Okay, Mark, I just heard my name. I don't think anybody heard anything else that you said, but it's good enough just to hear my name. So I'm gonna go. I just wanna say good afternoon to you, to all my esteemed colleagues, to SCAN. It's great to be here with you all today. I'm actually in the beautiful and car congested city of Riverside. I bring you greetings from Riverside. I am at a convening of the Air Resources Board, the California Transportation Commission, and HCD. I just want to say the focus of the meeting today, I think, summarizes what I hope the takeaway from this meeting is. We need to build housing and we need to save the planet. That's basically it. I mean, the amazing work that we are doing at the state of California to bring together housing goals and climate goals is just really exceptional. Just the recent awards that HCD and the Strategic Growth Council announced for the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program, ASIC or AHSC, just announced roughly $750 million. Just those awards add to 800,000 metric tons in the way that we awarded the construction of that new housing, 800,000 metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions, which means in addition to creating 5,500 new units of affordable housing, we are taking literally off the road 178,000 cars, taking them off the road for 1 year. And this is what the meeting that I'm here in Riverside is all about. This is exactly what the state of California should be doing. Building housing and saving the planet. And at HCD, let me just say our focus continues to be in implementing our comprehensive housing plan for the state, which, as you know, calls for the creation of 2.5 million new homes by 2030. 1 million of which needs to be deed restricted, affordable. Ambitious but doable if everyone plays their part. Thank you, Claudia. By playing your part, the Biden administration HUD in just this recent announcement of more than $400 million in federal funding administered by HCD. That's just an incredible news that just happened only a few days ago. We must all act with urgency to address homelessness and housing needs. And as challenging as this crisis is, and as much work as there still is to be done together, it is important to keep in mind that California is making progress and has many small wins along the way. Hundreds of thousands of homes are either built, are in the process of being built, or they are awarded throughout the Newsom administration. Gavin Newsom is the housing governor. This issue of housing affordability and homelessness was kept ignored for decades before Gavin Newsom became governor. But thanks to him, we've had a massive amount of investments, and thanks to the state legislature in many programs across many housing offices in the state of California. And that has really enabled us to start moving in the right direction. But again, the shortage of housing continues to be massive. Again, estimated at 2.5 million new homes that needs to be created in the next 7 years, roughly. But we are making progress on a number of fronts. I want to also acknowledge the work of the legislature in the past legislative cycle. Governor Newsom signed more housing bills this year. Or let me just say this, more bills on the housing topic and the housing and homelessness topic than any other policy domain that came to his desk to sign, to codify into state law. So we have a legislature that is a true partner that wants to make sure that we get to this 2.5 million new homes goal, adding money, and more importantly, adding the tools that the state can use to partner with localities to entitle and approve more housing faster. And if they don't, we have a housing accountability unit, and we have an attorney general that will work to holding local jurisdictions accountable for not creating the housing that is needed. So I just want to say we are making progress. Obviously, the governor will be the first one to acknowledge that people out there are still seeing the crisis of homelessness every day. We're emphasizing that homelessness will continue to be the top priority. It is no surprise to this group that we are experiencing this crisis as a humanitarian crisis, an economic crisis. Homelessness is indeed a housing crisis, but we also know from many studies that mental health problems and drug abuse continues to compound the crisis of homelessness. So we have bills this year, we have a bond proposal going in front of voters next year to help ameliorate the crisis of homelessness and the crisis of mental health that affects homelessness in a major way next year. I say the second key goal going forward will be climate change and infrastructure, and how this ties to the creation of new housing. Many bills also passed, and money for infrastructure and climate that will support the creation of more climate-friendly housing. And the third goal, and I'll close with this, continues to be our people-centered approach, our equity focus. We have done so much already implementing fair housing laws, making sure that they are in housing elements, calling out those falling short by design or action in our work to improve how we build equitable housing, how we meet fair housing obligations. We've given planning dollars, technical assistance, provided ongoing education. And again, with the expanding housing accountability unit, we are holding jurisdictions accountable, and we will continue to do so. So for our SCAMP members and leaders across the Southern California region, thank you for your efforts to help us with each and every jurisdiction in the Southern California region to move us in the right direction. So thank you again for the partnership that you all have with HCD, with the state legislature, with the governor's office, and we look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Gustavo. And again, if you have questions for Gustavo, please place them in the Q&A. And with that, we'll move on to Anthony Zito from the Tax Credit Allocation Committee, and also
Hello, I think I have a presentation to, I think, Jeanette. Should I share my own screen, or how do you guys,
We'll share it for you.
Okay, thank you. Well, sorry for the technical difficulties. I know I missed some of the beginning of the session. So thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Good afternoon. And so I just was here to provide some updates on what's going on at CDLAC and TCAC. And then I'm just going to go over just a brief agency overview for those of you, obviously CDLAC. Actually, if you could go to the next slide. So CDLAC administers the state Texas bond program to allocate debt authority in 2023. They will authorize $4.7 billion. And as most of you may know, the committee's priority and focus has been on affordable housing with those bonds. TCAC is the allocating agency for the state of California for low-income housing tax credits. We allocate both federal and state tax credits for affordable housing. And we monitor those projects for up to 55 years in exchange for those tax credits. So, and then I'm just going to go over year-to-date 2023. Next slide. So first round and second round in the 9% program, coincidentally, we received 76 applications in both rounds. And in the first round, we approved 27 of those applications. So we're still heavily oversubscribed, almost 3 to 1. And we posted our preliminary recommendation list for the second round on the 9% projects, and that was published last week. And on that list, we have 27 projects that we're recommending. So Coincidentally, 76 received in both rounds and 27 if approved at the November 8th meeting. And then, so next slide. So as I mentioned, 27 approved in the first round, 27 recommended in the second round. There's still the priority still been new construction projects. As you can see, it went up slightly in the second round for rehab projects, and the credits are pretty close to the same. State credits, we did have higher requests of state tax credits in the second round, and the low-income unit total is slightly higher in the second round as well. And we do intend to, so while we did recommend 27 projects, we will have a little credit remaining at the end of the year. We'll probably reach out and maybe grab 1 or 2 projects off of the waiting list that we will also be recommending to the committee for approval at next Wednesday's meeting. Next slide. All right, on to the bond and 4% tax credit rounds. We have 3 rounds this year. And in the first round, we received 85 applications. Second round, we received 60, and then we got a little bump in the third round. And as you can see, both the first and second round, we approved about 34 applications in each round. The third round awards will be made at the December 6th meeting. And I think the bump, obviously, for the rounds was mainly for rehab projects, because in prior years, we had cases where, a lot of the new construction projects relied on state tax credits. And given that those state tax credits were exhausted very early in the year, we have a lot of bond authority that would otherwise go to new construction projects, but only to those that are not requesting state credits. And so in an effort to not leave any bond allocation on the table, we want to get those and put those into use. We did allow for surplus bonds for rehab projects to compete against new construction projects for those surplus bonds at the conclusion of the year. Next slide. And so you can see the spread on this slide of new construction versus rehab. New construction is the blue or teal color, and then rehab is the reddish color. As you can see, as we've gone throughout the year in the 3 rounds, the rehab number has jumped up. So we expect to fund probably some rehab projects in this final third round, which we haven't done in recent years outside of the ones in the preservation and other rehabilitation pools. Next slide. All right, so this is just a summary of the projects that we've approved. So in the first 2 rounds, we approved 34 projects, as I mentioned, a little over $1 billion in each round. As you can see, the $315 million in state tax credits was taken in that first round, and that produced over 3,500 units in round 1. Round 2, we actually had the same amount of projects, but we had a higher number of units, which is good, 4,500 units. And as you can see, 181 million in state tax credits. Those were to projects funded from the CalHFA mixed income program. So that pretty much exhausted most of the state credits, but we did we transferred some of the mixed income program state tax credits over to the general allocation, and there was approximately 21 million, I want to say, available state tax credits in the third round. And then also we had about 16 million left for rehab projects, and that's outside of the 500 million state tax credits from the original state tax credits that we have available for tax exempt bond projects. So as I mentioned, we will bring those recommendations to the December 6th meeting. And then also, I just wanted to add one little note. Since, we've been approving supplemental bond allocations, so far we have approved 51 supplemental bond allocations, totaling a little over 108 million in bond allocations. So those are keeping those projects that need those additional bonds to meet the 50% test, with all of the construction cost increases and so on. we're able to move those projects forward. And so that is what's going on at TCAC. And then next slide. So in the entire year, we've received a total of 376 applications, and thus far we've awarded 95 projects totaling about 9,400 units. And if we add in the project that we're recommending at this second round, 9%, we'll have 122 projects and 10,847 affordable housing units, with one meeting left remaining for the year. So, and moving on, next slide. So looking forward, our regulation changes, we are hoping to get that out within the next week or two. I just want to give you a high-level overview of some of the changes we're considering. We're looking at the rural set-aside apportionment, which is so there's two rural set-aside apportionments, RHS/home. We're looking to broaden that to possibly allow for CDBG-DR projects to compete in that apportionment. And then in addition, the Native American apportionment, we've received feedback stating that, right now we currently allow 1.5 million in a given round, in the first round, which could exhaust that apportionment in the first round. So we're going to move away from a dollar amount, and we're thinking we're going to propose a percentage of the rural set-aside credits in each cycle. That way, that it will ensure that projects can apply in both the first and the second round and access Native American or in the Native American apportionment and access rural credits. In addition, we are adding some language with the passage of AB 1654 and the farm worker state credits. Basically, of that 500 million, 25, the lesser of 25 million or 5% is to be made available for farm worker housing projects. So we're just incorporating that into the regulation process and the language. And then also the place and service applications, we received feedback on that as far as delays. And so while we're still going to require that the place and service documentation be submitted within a year, we will provide additional time for specific documents if permanent conversion has not occurred. And then finally, developer fee, we're looking to make some changes there to give a slight increase from prior years. And that's just a quick overview. There's other changes, obviously, but those are the ones we wanted to highlight. The 2024 proposed schedule, we are looking at possibly reducing the 4% bond rounds from 3 to 2. And this just provides, there was a lot of overlap in the rounds, and this would just provide staff additional time, to focus on each of those rounds. And so we're looking at that, and we'll have more information on that. And then also we wanted to start with the 9% projects earlier in the year, because as you know, those projects are held to a 2-year federal place and service deadline. So the earlier those projects can start, the sooner they can be completed. And then finally, the 2024 draft opportunity maps. We've been working with HCD and our research partners on those, and we have published draft maps and methodology that we published a couple of weeks ago. We are taking comments on those maps through Friday, November the 17th. So please take a look at those and feel free to submit your comments. And that's what's going on at TCAC and CEDLAC. Next slide. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Anthony. And hey, we do have one basic question for an item you just brought up, which is, do you know when the 2024 meeting schedule and application due dates will be posted?
We're hoping sometime this month. I know that the committee has to adopt the schedule for CEDLAC, but we're hoping to post that this month.
Thank you. All right. With that, let's move over to Lynn Catano for the County of Los Angeles. Lynn, thank you very much for being here.
Hi, I'm Lynn Catano, Director of Housing Investment and Finance at the Los Angeles County Development Authority. It was great seeing a lot of you yesterday at the SCAMP conference and again today at the legislative discussion. And I really do appreciate all the feedback I get from people. I know a lot of people, I joke a lot about I have to have really thick skin because in a lot of these conversations, people are always telling me ways that the city and county should be improving things or how we need to change things to help address, the current environment. And I hope you all realize I do listen and I do take those comments to heart. And I realize, we're all on the same team and we are trying to be good partners with you. So I want to encourage people to continue sharing your feedback. And Daniel and I are always in conversation and, we hope to continue being in alignment with each other. So thanks for all the feedback you've shared so far. I'm going to go over a couple of different things as far as upcoming NOFAs. I know for the local development community in LA County, that is of primary interest is when our funding will be available. So currently, I think many of you know we had NOFA 29 that was issued in September. It was a relatively smaller NOFA for us. It was $29 million, and it was exclusively home ARP funds. So it had a lot of, like Claudia mentioned, it was much more restrictive as far as population goes. And it also had to comply with our geographic guidelines as far as home eligibility. So we actually had 11 eligible applications submitted, and we are currently reviewing and scoring those. We expect our award recommendations to go to the board in January of 2024. Of those 11 applications, we had a request in over $71 million in capital funding. So as everyone else has talked about being oversubscribed, we continue to be oversubscribed also. We also offered 300 project-based vouchers with our NOFA. So, we're fortunate that we do still have vouchers to include in our NOFA. I know everyone's very sensitive to the dwindling supply that we all have. And we're looking to Claudia and everybody at HUD to hopefully advocate for us to increase the cap on the PVVs. So we hope to see something happen there in the very near future. A couple things you may have noted if you did apply through NOFA 29 is that we did increase our per project cap, where in the past it's been, maybe $7 million. This year we did increase our cap to $10 million, being sensitive to the increased cost the developments are facing. So maximum cap on our NOFA and hopefully going forward is $10 million. Another thing that we introduced with NOFA 29 was public outreach requirements. And that was a recommendation that was given to us by the Board of Supervisors, that they wanted evidence of outreach activities made by our NOFA awardees to be conducted before we recommended funding to the Board of Supervisors. So that is something new that is going to be required going forward also. So something to keep in mind and take a look at maybe NOFA 29 for the added details there. Let's see. So NOFA 30. So because NOFA 29, we had one-time funding, the home ARP funding, we do have NOFA 30 and NOFA 31 with our No Place Like Home funds and our Affordable Housing Trust funds. So NOFA 30, because we have a time limitation on the commitment of our No Place Like Home funds, we are going out with an exclusive No Place Like Home fund, NOFA, for the development of affordable housing with their regulatory requirements. This is going to be a very large NOFA, approximately $150 million. So that is our remaining No Place Like Home allocation that has to be awarded by spring of 2024. So we will issue a term sheet next week, and we expect the NOFA to be issued in early to mid-December, with recommendations to the board to be issued in April of 2024. So that's something to keep in mind there. So again, $150 million with the increased project cap of $10 million and 600 project-based vouchers will be available to our participating jurisdictions. One major change I do want to note that we have been directed by Department of Mental Health that we are not going to be funding studios units in the next round. They're finding that studio units are not desirable and are not good fit for the population. So they have specifically asked that we do not fund any studio units with NOFA 30. Excuse me. Next NOFA would be NOFA 31. It will be funded with Affordable Housing Trust Funds, so our general county funds, and likely home funds. So that will be issued by mid-2024 after we complete majority of the review and scoring of NOFA 30. So we're going to have a busy year in 2024 getting out 2 large NOFAs. So just giving you that heads up so you can start planning ahead and, being aware that we likely will stick with the no studios recommendation for the permanent supportive housing populations. The other things that we are working on, besides scoring and issuing NOFAs, is we are issuing an RFP on behalf of the county. This will be, it's a county-owned parking lot in East LA. It's approximately 7/10 of an acre. So we are issuing the RFP for the development of affordable housing, and that will be going out fairly shortly upon the completion of a phase 2 that we just contracted. So if you're interested in that, that also gets noticed to our developers on our mailing list. I think good news for a lot of people, they've been waiting for LACHS updates. And that's our revolving loan fund for acquisition and pre-development funding. For those of you that may not be familiar with it, we work with our CDFIs, but we are contemplating adding additional $10 million to our revolving loan fund. And that should happen in early 2024 also. So that'll greatly help to expand our capacity with acquisition and pre-development funding. Other things that we've been talking about, and that did come up today in our legislative discussions, is preservation efforts. And what are we doing to address that? And we are having internal conversations about that. I know our staff has started reaching out, trying to set up roundtable discussions to get feedback on what is the best way that we should be targeting our funding to help preservation. So we're looking at NOAAs, rehabs, things like that. So your input is very valuable to us. You're the doing the heavy lifting. So if there's things that you can suggest that we look at, we appreciate your feedback. Yeah, any questions you have on our upcoming NOFAs, please submit them through the Q&A. Happy to address them. And I'll hand it back over to Mark.
Thank you, Lynn. And we're going to move to Daniel, but I just want to note that I know Gustavo has to leave at 4:30. So I see he's answered a whole lot of questions in the Q&A already, for which we're thankful. But if you have any more for Gustavo, please enter them now. We'll come back to the other questions at the end. But Daniel, up to you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to this and to be right next to some esteemed colleagues here trying to solve the affordable housing crisis. I wanted to answer to where we are today as a department, as a city. Where do we want to go and how do we want to get there? So to that end, specifically tied to the Housing Development Bureau, we package essentially our home funding from the federal government, SB2 and linkage fee, and that's how we go about funding our affordable housing managed pipeline. But specifically, I just wanted to know, I was just attending the lenders and investors forum, and just wanted to also share that while they were talking a little bit more about the volatility of what's going on, I think all of the public lenders also have been communicating with each other as to the fact that construction loan interest rates have doubled. Construction builders risk insurance renewals are becoming an issue. Even as you secure insurance for your buildings when they're in operation have nearly doubled. there's a lot of conversations about just finishing strong. And so to that end, I think that all of the public lenders can agree that we are trying to be as responsive as we can be. Wanted to just say this is a community. We're certainly in an ecosystem in which we're really trying our best to put, as our mayor said once, put heads on pillows. So to that end, HHH, I'm happy to report back that 45% of our HHH projects, 60 projects, have been completed. 34% of our projects are in construction, and then we also have 19% of our projects that are expected to start construction sometime next year. So effectively allowing for us to, finish off HHH, and that's been a really important thing for the city itself. We also have been through our affordable housing managed pipeline about 14 months ago, had slotted all the projects. We have a couple remaining that we're slotting for a 9% tax credit round 1 next year. But more or less, we are kind of managing our pipeline effectively, as effective as possible. In addition, the city has taken advantage of all the opportunities with HCD. Thank you, Gustavo, and your department, with Project Home Key 2.0, as well as 3.0. And so the city is really excited to acquire some further sites. And as well as being co-applicants for ASIC Awards, which is a very successful program of the state. So the city is really trying to position itself to leverage every single funding source with developers. Our current priorities right now, as I expressed earlier, is really about finishing strong. There are some challenges in front of us with gaps, and some of it requires a supplemental bond application, in which the city has, as bond issuer, has supported. There's also bond reissuance that's required of us if there are some changes. And then in addition, we've had to fill in gaps, and many of them are legitimate. So to that end, we've launched in 2021, late 21, we had offered up a mini NOFA, construction cost overrun NOFA for $15 million. We just recently rolled out a fast track solutions program supporting setting aside $28.4 million. That in itself, we were oversubscribed 2-to-1, and basically know that there are more resources that are going to be required to support many of these projects to get to the finish line. In addition, we are also knowing that there's scarcity amongst the entire public funding system. HCD, if you all had attended the workshop yesterday, that was well conducted. HCD has announced that all of their programs, Supernova, is highly oversubscribed. We know that the city of LA, we could help to accelerate programs. We have something called the Accelerator Plus program that council and our mayor had approved, utilizing $56.8 million of the $150 million that was approved to help launch these projects and accelerate them and expedite them for the development of affordable housing. Further information will be uploaded onto our system, and if you're on our mailing list, you'll hear a little bit more, or we can help to answer some of those questions during Q&A. We are also looking under the hood for LHD. How we go about, anything is how we go about everything. I guess that's a mantra that I've been repeating. We need to help facilitate to make sure that your general contractors are getting paid as quickly as possible. And we are 3 times better than we were where we were last year in October. We know that we need to help you get to perm conversion a lot faster due to the fact that you might miss your perm loan rate lock. And that's something that we're working through. We are also acting as a conduit to help you as a developer, especially if it's a PSH development, to use the coordinated entry system and to essentially lease up so that you can achieve qualified occupancy, which is one of the requirements in order for you to convert your project to perm. So that is kind of things that the department is doing in terms of helping to bring some level of stability and predictability and extra effort to kind of stabilize the ground. And in addition to that, we're also very thankful for our mayor's leadership through ED1 in helping to accelerate certain processes within the department, whether it be your replacement, your RUDs or your land use covenant determinations or planning determinations, and also if you need to seek, power through LADWP. So we're very thankful for the city family to be able to work together to address these issues. So to that end, happy to just say that we are, we're very happy with the number of production and the hard work of all of our developers and making this work happen. We know that we need you to continue, to move forward, and we continue to need you to address our affordable housing crisis. So I will pass it on to Mark. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. And we do have a number of questions in the questions and answers box, so feel free to put some more in. But Lynn, your studio rule seems to be the most popular question generator of the day. So I don't know if you want to spend a little bit more time on that. I think there was one question about what the rationale was for moving away from studios. There was a second one about, will you, for projects that have already been designed to include studios, will you accommodate those in some way? So do you want to just touch on a couple of those issues?
I'll try, but I think for the most part, I will have to revisit this a little bit for clarification. So our direction comes from the Department of Mental Health, who obviously No Place Like Home Funds is a state administered program through Department of Mental Health. We are their administrative partner in this and are issuing the NOFA on their behalf. And their findings are that studio units aren't conducive to the mental health population, their clients that they serve, and that a lot of the units that are studios are remaining vacant. So it's a concern that they have, and that is why they've directed us not to fund studio units in this next NOFA.
Thanks. And then you also had one question about developers who apply to NOFA 29. Can they also apply to NOFA 30, even though they haven't heard back on NOFA 29 yet?
That's a good question. I have to give that one a little bit of thought. I mean, I hate to make people reapply for things, but yeah, understanding the overlap, it might be something we have to consider. So again, if somebody could reach out to me directly, or if I could post that later, I'd be happy to.
And then I think this one is for you as well.
Sorry, Mark, lost you.
Depth regarding, let me try one more time. I think this one is for you. Are you able to go into depth regarding raising capital for the revolving loan fund?
I'm not quite sure what that means. So if they're asking how we're increasing the LACHIF fund, is we set aside $10 million from our Affordable Housing Trust Fund, knowing that leveraging that fund would help the capacity of a lot of projects besides direct allocations to projects. So that was our rationale for expanding the revolving loan fund. Not sure if that answered the question or not.
Well, we hope it does, and we'll see if that one comes back. And Daniel, for you, with the ULA lawsuit having been dismissed, will there be capital funding available for new projects soon?
Technically, it hasn't. Thanks, Mark. Technically, it hasn't been dismissed. I mean, their judge has provided a verbal kind of finding or made judgment on this, but it's not final, but I do want to just say that things are looking great. But we will need to wait until everything is all wrapped up. But it does kind of pose the question of like, how fast can we write regs? Can we organize ourselves to, kind of begin to set up these programs? That's another conversation for another day, but those are things that the department is really needing to laser in on pretty soon.
And then there's a more general question that maybe any of you might want to jump in on, but has there been any discussion around the use of master leasing with companies who have a history of receiving tenant-based vouchers as a strategy for addressing the issue with obtaining project-based vouchers? Does anyone want to take a crack at that one? If not, maybe the person who posed that question might want to clarify a little bit, but I don't know any of it. Do our panelists want to?
I think I understand what the question is, and that is something we have been talking about a lot, is how we can leverage tenant-based vouchers in light of the shortage of project-based vouchers. And again, we hope to be convening some conversations about that also, soliciting some ideas of other ways that we can get lenders to be comfortable with underwriting tenant-based vouchers. How do we get developers to be able to use them in case we do completely run out of project-based vouchers? So yeah, I think I understand the question, but we don't have an answer yet, unfortunately, and suggestions are welcome.
Yeah, I would just add that this is something that has risen to HUD's attention as well. So it's something that we're gonna be exploring. Obviously, there's a lot of communication on this or discussion on this in other sections within HUD. So.
And then I was going to maybe pull back a little bit to a much more of a broader policy question. Is it, I've heard a number of discussions among affordable housing and affordable housers and the investment community recently that a high concentrations of high acuity homeless individuals can create a serious operating challenge for development, especially in an environment of limited services funding and few alternatives to higher levels of care. Are each of your agencies considering any policy changes to sort of mitigate these challenges in terms of the level of acuity or maybe the percentage of homeless folks that you would like to see in a development? Any thoughts around those areas? Did I come through?
We're pretending we can't hear you, Mark. No.
Oh, fair enough.
No, I think that's a difficult scenario because, we're directed by the Board of Supervisors and by a lot of advocates. We're trying to address homelessness, and we understand that, the highest acuity are the most difficult to handle through like different county systems. But we also recognize the lower acuity families, homeless families, need help too. How do we prevent people from falling into homelessness, at-risk individuals? So there's a broad spectrum and we wish we could help everybody. But, again, this is something that we're all talking about on a regular basis. And I know LHD also, they're looking at changing some requirements and using CES in different ways. So hopefully we'll come up with some different perspectives for you.
It is indeed a difficult conversation. Daniel, you all have had some really particular experiences in the city of LA. Have you had any further thoughts on that topic or something you're still noodling on?
Yeah, we're certainly noodling. I think we're certainly thinking through these issues a little bit more, just deeper. I don't have much more to say, Mark. I think there's a lot of conversations taking place.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing right now is we have a number of units that need to be leased up that are HHH, projects, and we need to focus on kind of helping to move those along before we can talk about some of these challenges.
Fair enough. There was one question in the Q&A for me, I guess, is that were folks suggesting that CES allow a mix of acuity levels to make projects more successful? I think, again, there's been no consensus among the community for sure, but I think that is one idea that has been raised. Another that has been raised is lowering, percentages of PSH required to access various thresholds or special pots of funding. But again, there are lots of people who are homeless with high acuity we still need to house. So, but those are some of the discussions that are occurring. Yes, absolutely. And then there was another question on updates regarding changing the federal statutory limit on project basing vouchers. And I can jump in on that. We do a lot of advocacy around federal issues, and we are very interested in Congressman
We lost you, Mark.
50%. Okay. Lynn, do you may want to take the issue of the statutory PVV link limit?
I can't really speak well to the actual language. Claudia, do you know more probably? Was it
Well,
50%?
I think it was 50%, the
50%,
last we revised, yeah, to go up to 50%. But, those are ongoing conversations at the, at high level within the Public and Indian Housing, division of HUD. And it's a difficult situation. It's something that in my prior role, we definitely advocated for that increase, and is still very much in a center of conversation in terms of increasing that. And, it's a very tight budget. HUD has been deploying quite a bit of assistance through different specialized vouchers. And so I think that's going to be an ongoing situation and discussion at the federal level and local levels.
And on that topic, Daniel, one just came in for you. Thank you, Claudia, for taking that one. Sorry, I cut out. With fewer project-based vouchers and the statutory limit not reset, will LASD consider releasing dollars for non-homeless units?
We've always allowed for, I'm not quite sure what this person that's asked this question, but we have supported non-PSH units through our affordable housing management pipeline. It was just, there was a kind of waterfall to our affordable housing managed pipeline and how we awarded units. So, I think this is the reality we're dealing with, and we would need to address. Our next set of regs will have to be responsive to that dilemma of very limited project-based vouchers. So, so the answer, long-winded way of saying yes, we're going to need to retool.
Continue to do that. And I see one more general question in here about, are there efforts to target the needs of near homeless folks or older adults who are sicker and have limitations on activities? I think obviously there's been a large focus on housing those who are unhoused of late. And I think this questioner is asking a little bit more about other needs, housing needs that are out there. Are any of your agencies thinking of prioritization along those lines, or sticking with mostly with the unhoused population?
I think the department's pretty sensitive to this data point. U.S. Census has stated that by 2035, there would be more people over 65 than under 18. And so how does our built environment look to address that? Remains to be seen. But I think there are folks within the department really trying to figure out how we proceed within the next 5 years or so.
And then I have one more sort of question for you all, and if any more come in the Q&A, we can continue. Daniel, you talked a lot about, or significant about how you're addressing some of the cost increases that are coming in, whether it's interest rates, insurance costs, etc. Lynn, you all are also on the front line. Is that something that you've had to deal with in with a number of your originally funded developments?
Yes, absolutely. So we are trying to provide some gap financing for some of our projects that have encountered difficulties, especially in the unincorporated LA counties outside of LA City. LA City's done a great job in stepping up to help their projects. So, while we don't have as much funding probably available, we are trying to do as best we can.
And Anthony, on that topic, I mean, obviously a lot of projects have come into SIDLAC for supplemental bond allocations in the last year. I mean, a huge record or anything we've ever seen in the past. Have you had any on the 9% side or otherwise? Have you had credits returned as a result of sort of cost increases?
Surprisingly, no, we haven't, and folks have been closing, on time and, I think a lot of the things that we see is more, like place in service, folks were having some delays. I know PG&E maybe a few months ago was a big issue, getting in utilities and things like that, but not, at least we haven't heard much, from them, as far as, additional credits or anything like that outside of those supplemental bonds. So I think maybe folks are building in a cushion, maybe. I don't know, but the good thing is that they're moving forward and maybe absorbing it, I guess. But we haven't gotten any return credits, so that's a good thing.
And a somewhat related topic, the committee now has greater authority to grant credit year exchanges for items beyond the developer's control. And have you seen any of those come in, or is that still it hasn't happened?
No, it hasn't happened. The only ones that we've been seeing are, the ones that we approved for waiting list projects, basically the folks that got funded towards the end of the year, because they are cutting it close to that federal place in service deadline. So I think those are the only ones we've been seeing this year. I know both Ricky and I have not seen any requests for that broadened authority given to the executive director. So, but that's not to say that they won't, we won't see them in the future. So.
All right, and Daniel, one last question for you. What is the estimated timing for opening up the AHMP to new applications?
I'll certainly have to be after July 1st of 2024. I think I hopefully was able to describe the magnitude, the rough order of magnitude of the type of things that are going on with our current projects. We need to, shore up the resources to address these projects before we can kind of think about the future. So that pause is going to be needed. We will, of course, need to go back to the entire community to retool and revise and get red line comments, and that would be sometime next year. But we don't see us rolling out a new NOFA until July 1st, sometime after July 1st. Of 2024.
And with that, I would like you all to join me in thanking our panelists for presenting all of this information. We have, there's 5 funding sources represented today, and together all those funds come together into thousands and thousands of affordable housing units. So thank you all for being here. And then I want to also give a special shout out to Jeanette Brown from SCAMP, who put this panel together and who actually is, this will be her last SCAMP conference. So we're all so pleased to have worked with Jeanette over the years, and we hope to keep her in our family. But thank you all for attending today. And there's obviously no more SCAMP conference tomorrow, but so we're all done for now. See you all next year.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.